They say every town has its secrets. Some are whispered about at diner tables. Others are buried so deep that even the oldest locals pretend they never existed. Greywick was one of those dying towns. Rows of empty storefronts, peeling paint, and cracked sidewalks told the story of a place long forgotten by progress. Families moved away, businesses closed, and only a handful of stubborn souls remained, clinging to memories of better days. Among them was 14-year-old Ellie Harrow. Her family had just moved into her late grandmother's crumbling house on the outskirts of town. A fresh start, her mother said. A quiet place to heal, her father promised. The town felt heavy somehow, like the air was thicker here. On their first night, unpacking boxes and trying to ignore the creaking floorboards, Ellie found something tucked behind the kitchen stove. A faded sepia photograph. A carnival, bright banners, smiling faces. And clowns, dozens of them, frozen mid-laughter. At the bottom, in a jagged script, were the words, "The Grand Return, one night only." Strange. Ellie didn't remember hearing about any carnival in town. But then again, Greywick seemed to be a place full of things people preferred to forget. It started with a whisper. Ellie heard it late at night while lying awake in her unfamiliar room. A giggle, faint and high-pitched, drifting through the open window. She sat up, peering into the backyard, but saw nothing except the tall, dry grass swaying in the breeze. The next morning, flyers appeared overnight, plastered across the town's cracked walls and telephone poles. The Carnival of Eternal Laughter, reopening tonight at sundown. No one knew who had put them up. The townsfolk muttered and tore them down, but by afternoon, more would appear. At the diner, Ellie overheard two old men arguing. "Should have stayed buried," one said, voice trembling. "It ain't real," the other snapped. "Just some kids playing tricks." That night, Ellie's family sat in silence at dinner. Her mother stirred her soup absently. Her father stared into nothing. In the distance, over the hills, Ellie saw lights, bright, colorful, pulsing against the night sky. The carnival had come back. Ellie couldn't resist. The next evening, while her parents argued about money and bills, she slipped out and followed the glow. The carnival was off. The rides creaked but didn't move. The prize booths displayed faded, moth-eaten toys. The air smelled not of popcorn or candy apples, but something metallic, something sour. But the strangest thing was the tent. A massive striped tent sat at the center of the grounds. Over the entrance hung a wooden sign, "Eternal Laughter, come one, come all." People lined up outside, their faces blank, their eyes glassy. One by one they disappeared inside, and none came out. Ellie felt something tugging at her, an invisible string pulling her closer. But before she could cross the threshold, a hand grabbed her arm. It was a boy, maybe a few years older, with sharp eyes and a trembling voice. "Don't go in," he hissed. "They'll never let you leave." His name was Jonah, and he knew things. In hushed tones, he told Ellie about the legend. Decades ago, the carnival had come, promising joy and wonder. But laughter had turned into screams. Whole families vanished. Those who entered the Eternal Laughter tent became something else. Their laughter echoed through town for years after, hollow and broken, until one day the carnival simply disappeared. But now it had returned. "It feeds on loneliness," Jonah whispered. "It needs new echoes." Ellie and Jonah tried to warn others, but no one would listen. The townspeople seemed almost enchanted, drawn toward the tent each night, disappearing inside with slack smiles. On the third night, Ellie couldn't take it anymore. She had to know what was inside. Together, she and Jonah sneaked back to the grounds. They slipped past twisted carnival games, abandoned food stalls, and faded murals. The tent loomed ahead, breathing almost, the fabric pulsing slightly with each beat of Ellie's heart. She pushed through the heavy flap. Inside, the world warped. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, shrouded in mist. Laughter echoed from nowhere and everywhere. Clowns lined the walls, grinning wide, their painted faces grotesquely twisted. In the center stood the ringleader, tall, thin, wearing a tattered top hat and a blood-red coat. His face was hidden behind a mask, but his voice was unmistakable. "Welcome, dear guests. Welcome to forever." Around him, the missing townsfolk stood, their mouths stretched into silent screams, their eyes hollow. Ellie tried to run, but the laughter wrapped around her like chains. Ellie struggled, but the more she fought, the deeper she sank into the nightmare. Jonah yelled, trying to pull her free, but the ringleader turned and Ellie saw his face. It wasn't a stranger at all. It was her grandfather, the same man her family refused to talk about, the same man who had disappeared years ago. "You brought me back," he whispered, voice cracked and broken. "You opened the door." Ellie remembered the photograph she had found, the one she had touched, the one she had stared at for hours that first night, wishing, unknowingly, for excitement, for something to happen. She had awakened the carnival. Jonah dragged Ellie out just in time. Behind them, the tent shuddered and roared, the laughter rising to a deafening crescendo. The carnival collapsed inward like a dying star, vanishing into the misty night. For a moment, all was silent. Greywick returned to its gray, crumbling quiet. But sometimes when Ellie walks alone past the empty fields where the carnival once stood, she hears it. A faint giggle carried by the wind. And when she looks into the shadows, she sees him, her grandfather, waiting for the day she'll laugh and never stop, because some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed. Have you ever driven past an abandoned carnival at dusk, where the rusted rides groan in the wind and the air itself feels heavy with forgotten laughter? That's where this story begins. Ethan and Mia were siblings, close in the way that only children who've faced hardship together could be. After the loss of their parents, they clung to each other like shipwrecked survivors. When their estranged uncle left them a crumbling house in the outskirts of Belridge, a sleepy town surrounded by endless woods, it felt like a new start, a quiet life, a way to heal. The house itself was nothing remarkable. Peeling paint, creaky floors, and the smell of old wood. But tucked away in one of the attic boxes, they found something odd. It was a photograph, yellowed and curling at the edges, a picture of a carnival. Beneath the faded image, in looping ink, were the words, "Carnival of Whispers, where dreams come true." At first they laughed it off, a relic from a bygone era. But at the bottom of the box was a map, hand-drawn, leading deep into the woods behind their new home. That night Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept hearing it, soft broken music drifting in through the open window. A melody that seemed almost familiar, like a lullaby half remembered from childhood. When he peered into the trees beyond their backyard, he thought he saw movement, lights, flickering between the trunks, as if something beckoned. The next morning, he told Mia. She teased him for letting his imagination run wild. But when they opened the window again, they both smelled it, the distinct, sweet scent of cotton candy on the breeze. Curiosity won. They packed a backpack, flashlights, water, a first aid kit, and decided to follow the map. The deeper they ventured into the forest, the quieter the world became. Birdsong faded. The trees thickened, blocking out the sunlight until the woods themselves felt alive, watching. Hours later, just when Ethan thought they were hopelessly lost, they found it, the Carnival of Whispers. Broken booths slumped against each other. The Ferris wheel loomed like a skeletal hand clawing at the sky. and at the very center stood the final carousel. Still, waiting. Mia was the first to approach it. She swore she could hear laughter, children's laughter, whispering through the air. The carousel was a wonder despite its decay. Horses with jewel-bright eyes, frozen mid-prance. Gilded mirrors cracked like spiderwebs. An ornate sign hung overhead. One wish, one ride. They didn't notice the figure at first, an old man sitting in a ticket booth, hunched and unmoving. When Ethan called out, he slowly raised his head. His eyes were clouded but sharp with something unnatural. One wish, he rasped, one price. They should have left, but Mia, with all the stubbornness of youth, stepped forward. "I want Mom and Dad back," she whispered. The man smiled, a horrible, knowing smile, and rang a cracked silver bell. The carousel groaned to life. Lights flickered, the horses shuddered, and the music, oh, the music, howled from some unseen phonograph. Mia climbed onto a horse. The carousel spun, once, twice, and Ethan watched, frozen in horror, as Mia's reflection in the cracked mirrors changed. Her face grew pale, her eyes hollow. As the carousel slowed, she stumbled off, dizzy, confused, and not quite right. From that moment, everything shifted. At home, Mia began talking to people who weren't there. Her laughter would sometimes turn into sobbing without warning. And at night, Ethan would wake to find her standing at the window, whispering to the trees. He had to find out what was happening. The town's library held little, just a few scraps of history. But an old woman at the market noticed his research. She pulled him aside and hissed, "The carnival grants what you desire, but it peels away your soul, one ride at a time." Once the carousel completed its 7th spin, there would be nothing left of Mia, only a hollow shell, forever trapped in the twisted reflection of that haunted carnival. Desperate, Ethan returned to the woods alone. The carnival seemed different now, more alive. The air pulsed with unseen heartbeats. The shadows seemed to lean toward him as he passed. When he reached the final carousel, the old man was waiting, smiling wider than before. "You want her back, don't you?" he rasped, beckoning Ethan forward. Before he could react, the carousel spun to life again. This time, the horses didn't just move, they twisted, melted into grotesque, nightmarish forms. Faces stretched into silent screams. Ethan stumbled back, but the mirrors caught him. Inside them, he saw Mia, not the Mia he knew, but a distorted, weeping figure reaching out through the glass. And worse, he saw himself, older, grayer, trapped, riding endlessly, round and round, forever. The music slowed, warped, and then silence. The old man spoke, voice low and dangerous. One final ride. Save her or lose her forever. Ethan hesitated. And that was when he saw it. Behind the old man, tucked beneath the carousel's platform, was an entire wall of photographs. Faces, hundreds of them, some smiling, some screaming. And at the very center was a photo of his uncle, the man who had given them the house, smiling proudly beside the very same final carousel. The realization hit him like a hammer. Their inheritance wasn't chance, it was a trap. Their family had long been tied to this cursed place, feeding it, sacrificing generation after generation to keep the carnival alive. And now, it was Ethan's turn. Determined, Ethan made his choice. He smashed the nearest mirror with a rock, shattering the twisted reflections. The carousel shrieked, yes, shrieked, in protest. Lights exploded overhead, the ground trembled, and the faces in the photographs began to howl. With a final desperate lunge, Ethan pulled Mia's reflection from the broken glass, dragging her, gasping, terrified, into the real world. The carnival began to collapse, folding in on itself like a house of cards. Trees swallowed it whole. The old man screamed, his voice fading into the night. They ran. When they stumbled back into the light of their backyard, gasping and filthy, it was as if the carnival had never existed. The woods were still, silent. But at night, when the wind picks up just right, Ethan can still hear the distant strains of carousel music drifting in on the breeze. Mia never speaks of what happened, and sometimes when Ethan catches her reflection in a mirror, it's not quite her looking back. So, if you ever find a map in an old attic leading you into the woods, don't follow it, because some rides you never get off.